I recently recorded a live performance of a chamber orchestra. The recordings turned out really, really nicely, and the mixes are coming along quite well as well. We were recording in a really nice hall, and that really helped. This particular evening, they played 7 pieces by 7 different composers. So there was a lot of variety in these recordings, and that's really nice. On one of the pieces, there are a couple technical issues that I wanted to address in the mix. One of them is a squeaky vibraphone pedal, and we were in a bit of a rush here to record these. I didn't notice it in rehearsal. Maybe if we had one more rehearsal, I would have noticed it, but it really sticks out. There's very little I can do about that when it's mixed in with the orchestra, but when it's by itself, I can certainly try to address that squeak. It is as loud as the vibraphone itself at some point. And I guess I should say that, I'm mixing this live performance. As I'm mixing it, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a studio recording. We have an audience. We have babies crying occasionally. We have doors squeaking at inopportune times. So there's no denying this is a live performance. But, when you do a recording and, people might listen to the recordings 10 times, and little things like that, you really start to notice them more as you listen more. Additionally, these mics, especially the cardioids, pick up on things that the human ear did probably not notice in the live performance. If you were sitting in the hall, you might not have noticed. And that definitely applies to the second thing, which is some clarinet overtones, which the mics kind of accentuated a bit on one particular note that I'd like to massage just a little bit. So, just to look at the mics here, I've got 12 mics this day, and the first 2 are a pair of omnis it's a spaced pair of omnis, and then on the same stereo bar, I have a pair of cardioids in DIN configuration. I will make a separate video about this particular way of recording, but it's called a phased array, and what it allows me to do is choose either the omnis or the cardioids for their character for each particular piece. With 7 pieces, each with its own, distinct character, it's really nice having that flexibility. However, using that comes with some trade-offs as well, and I'll get into that in another video. Just to run through the rest of the mics, I have 3 pairs of stereo solo spots, but the piece I'm going to play for you has none of these featured, so you won't hear those mics. We do have 2 pianos on stage, one left, one right, fairly far backstage, at the rear of the stage, and I have a solo spot on each one of those. In the buses, all of those mics are feeding into these first 4 buses. I've got 1 bus for the omnis, 1 for the cardioids, 1 for the spots, and then I do use a touch of reverb on one of the soloists, but again, you won't hear that in that piece. And then those 4 buses feed into the processing bus. I've used very little processing here on this piece. The main thing I used is a multi-band compressor to try to tame some of the boom in the room, but that's about it. These recordings sound pretty nice without a lot of processing. But this 12th mix bus here is where I'm going to do my notched EQ to try to address these 2 issues. So let me get into it here and let you listen to the first couple minutes of this piece and see if you hear what I want to address. All right, so you can hear that vibe pedal squeak pretty loud. I'm going to go to another section here where it's playing by itself. So yeah, that squeak is loud enough to have a reverb tail. So I want to try to reduce that to the extent I can. So I'm going to open up my buses again, and oh, I guess they were already open. To the processing bus, I'm going to add a parametric EQ. Put that pre-fader, and let's look at it here. So let's go ahead and expand this. There we go. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is let's just set a loop here and listen and see if I can find the frequency of that squeak. So as you can see, it's right about 55K. So I'm just going to put a notch filter here, get the Q really tight. And most I can do is negative 18 dB. And let's just see how well that's centered. I'm going to turn this off just so I can do it visually for a second. All right, so that's pretty good. I think I got the right frequency. I'm going to A/B this. So I'll start with it disabled, and then I'll turn it on and off just to see how much it affects that. So whenever you do any sort of EQ to address a problem, you have to also assess what else this is going to affect. When the vibraphone is by himself, the thing that we're going to affect most, the vibes do have overtones up in that area, so you're going to diminish those a bit. But even bigger than that, I think, is the room ambience. You reduce the room ambience. So I don't, but that's just a trade-off. That squeak, again, having its own reverb tail, it's pretty loud. So we can deal with a little bit less of the room ambience. So I'm going to run this and turn it on and off. So right now it's disabled. All right, so I'm happy with reducing that to the extent we did there. And again, you can hear the room ambience diminishing a bit there too. But another thing to listen to then is if we were to apply this universally through this piece, what are we going to be missing in the orchestra? So let's do the same thing here. I'll start with it off, and we'll loop this and just see how much we're going to be missing if we leave it in for the whole piece. Oops. Somehow didn't set my loop. There we go. Yeah, you really notice that. So I'm going to want to automate this so that it's only active during that solo place for the vibraphone. So again, let's set a loop here. So, oh no, I've already done this. So what I need to do is just set the automation. So I'm going to put my cursor. I'm going to want to basically match where the orchestra fades out and back in. And that's where I'm going to slide in the EQ right at the fades. So I've got it right, got my cursor right at the moment the orchestra fades out. So let's go down here, and I've got my automation. I'm going to add an automation track or automation lane for that parametric EQ. And let me, I'm just going to rename this. Just so I'll know what it is down the line. So let's turn it on. And then in my processing, I'm going to add the automation lane here. And I know this is gain number 4 because it's the 4th band in the stereo EQ. And I can confirm because it's at -18, which is where I set it there. So what I'm going to do, and you can actually see it in this graph here, if I go back and set this to 0, you can see it goes back to 0. So now all I need to do, since this is only the gain, I know that I can automate it down here and not affect the frequency. So I'm going to set a couple edit points here, or automation points. That's going to be the fade in, or the fade out of the orchestra, the fade in of the EQ, if you will. And then it's going to come back out right about here. It's pretty short. All right, so I've got my automation points. I can just pull it down to -18. And now I'll just do the loop again. Make the loop a little bit wider. So right about there. And let's just listen to it and watch the automation. Boy, I'm having trouble with setting the loops today. I keep getting the range and then not setting the loop. There we go. All right, I already know I want that a little bit earlier. So let's go back to here and just adjust this by a little bit. Oh, it's hard to grab these points. It drives me nuts. There we go. All right, let's see how that works. Okay, that's way too early. What am I doing here? So I want it to be right about here. Why did I get that so far off? I must have been zoomed out too far. All right, now let's try it. Okay, just a tad earlier. Let's zoom in farther. Okay, I like the entrance. I want to pull the fade out just a little bit. Let's just make the loop a little tighter here so I can loop it easier. Okay, I want it just a little bit later and a little bit faster. Nope, that's too late. Let's try it. Maybe just half a second. And if I needed more precise, I'd turn my snapping off here, but I think this is going to do it for purposes of the video. Let's try it. Oop. Too early, too quick. Oh, come on, get that point. Ah, rats. And I think I can even do it a bit slower then. There's no reason... Oh, don't grab both of those. There's no reason to rush that coming out. Okay, that's good. All right, so if this were the real mix, I would go ahead and do the same thing to the other instances where the vibe is by itself or wherever the squeak is a bit too much, and just see if it's worth it to try to do that EQ. And the nice thing is the automation lane is there, the frequency is set, all I need to do is add more points, which I find challenging this morning, but... okay, so next thing, let's go to the clarinet and try to do something similar here. Let's go back to where the beginning of the piece and just let's set a loop here. I should go ahead and listen to the whole thing there, and let's listen to this again. So the overtones are only apparent when she crescendos. So if you're using EQ to pull out some frequencies, you are affecting volume. So, but we want to do it in as the least obtrusive way we can, and we want to try to avoid affecting the intensity of the note. So that's the goal here. So I'm going to go back over to processing, and I'm going to add another parametric EQ. And oops, didn't mean to do that. I want to label this one. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing here. Open up the EQ. And let's hear, I think we can close this one. And turn on the spectrum, and let's loop this and listen. Try to figure out which overtones we want to address. So we see the fundamental about here. We don't want to touch that. And then with the fundamental at about a little bit reduced volume, but consistent, we see the first overtone or first harmonic. And then we see second and third level harmonics there. And those are the ones that increase and make it sound a little bit harsh. So I'm going to set 2. I don't think I need to address the first harmonic, just the second and third. Okay, so I don't know where it is, but we'll try to roughly get these, and we'll loop it and try to find them. All right, so that's pretty close. And again, those harmonics, those overtones, only come in when she crescendos. So I'll be able to match the entrance of those harmonics and where they exit. And they exit fairly abruptly, I think. Let me listen one more time just to hear how they fade out. Yeah, that's pretty abrupt, so I'm going to try to find exactly where that is now. Oh, got to turn auto return off. Keep forgetting about that. So they come in right about here. And going to go down to my automation and add an automation lane for both of those. And I know that those are gain 3 and 4 on that on the parametric EQ. I was reading the screen. All right, so parametric EQ, gain 3 and 4. And again, we can see they're both at negative 18, so that's good. So same as last time, I'm going to zero those back out. And then just set some automation points. That's not the place to do it. And I'm going to see if I can. Let's just expand these, see if it makes it easier to grab my points. Zoom in just a little bit. All right, so I want automation points here and here. Okay, so I think it's more like this. And we'll just set some out points here as well. So that's pretty quick. And let's just pull both of these down to negative 18 and see what that looks like. I want to readjust my loop, I think. Oops, where'd it go? Well, I don't have a loop. That's too wide. Oh no, I just zoomed in. Okay, I'm having a hard time today. My goodness. Loop is fine. I think the position is fine. I think they're just a little too fast. That's because I zoomed in on the timeline. So let's pull this back just I'm sorry, a little too fast. It's pulled over to here. And it came out too fast as well. Let's try that. Coming out is still way too fast. Oh. Hard to get the exact spot. I think I'm almost there. It's tough because those overtones fade by themselves so quickly that I don't really want to match that speed, but it's pretty darn close. And now I want to A-B this. I'm going to turn it off and loop this, and I'll have it off for the first time and on for the second. Just see how it sounds. So I think that sounds pretty good. I'm happy with this, and there were no other notes that I wanted to address. That was just one little spot. One thing that's nice to do, though, so obviously we can A-B this and we can hear what we've done, but one trick that's nice to hear exactly what change you've made is to export a section, a snippet of this music with and without the EQ automation, and then compare that. So I'll show you how to do that now. I'm going to use the vibraphone, so it's a little bit easier to hear. All right, so we got our vibe squeaks range set here. I'm going to go ahead and do an export. And I've already got my time span set up to just the vibe pedal part, and we're going to just do this with the EQ first at negative 23 LUFS. That doesn't really matter because we're just comparing these. Okay, so got that done. So I'm going to come down to the automation, and let's see, which one is this? Vibe pedal. We'll turn this to manual so that there will be no automation, and I'll do the exact same export. And we'll call this no EQ. All right, so now I'm just going to create a new session, and I will call this, just call it comps, and it's going to be empty. All right, so now I'm going to import both of those files. And these are going to be in my export folder. So it's vibe, pedal, squeak, no EQ, and normal. Go ahead and copy those files. I'm going to go ahead and create new tracks, 1 track per file. That'll be 2 stereo tracks. And there we go. And I'm going to try to play this and see if it's actually playing here. I'm going to turn down the monitor level a little bit. No, I need to adjust something in my routing here since I'm recording to my external recorder. I need to send that, and that's in the background here. Just sending my routing to my external recorder. Now I'll play again. All right, so that's basically double the orchestra, except I turned the monitoring down. So what I'm going to do here then is reverse the polarity on track 2, and so then we'll hear the difference between the two. So where these two snippets are exactly the same, reversing the polarity on one of them will make them null, and you'll hear nothing. And then when the EQ comes in, you'll hear only the difference between the two channels. So I'm going to turn the master or the monitor back up and listen. All right, so that's a pretty cool test just to see what happened. And one of the things that tells me that I didn't notice in the first listening was that as the orchestra fades out and the EQ fades in, we're cutting out a little bit of that bari sax. So the bari sax is essentially a bass instrument, but every instrument has a timbre, and that comes through overtones. And we can see that the bari sax obviously was emitting overtones in the 5,500 hertz range. So just interesting to note that, and it's a nice little tool to just diff something. The weird thing about doing a diff like this and trying to null them is that had I increased the EQ instead of decreased it, you'd hear basically the same thing here. So this doesn't really tell you exactly what's going on, but if you know the changes you made, then this can help you confirm what you're doing. So notch EQs can be really handy tools when used judiciously in a mix.